Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on this 21st day of December 2022. Thank you, Bob, for coming back onto the channel.
My pleasure, Evan. Great to be here, and congratulations. You are the big winner.
Thank you. Yes, I just got done with almost 3 hours, so I apologize ahead of time. I'm a little bit drained, but I got plenty to go here with getting an update from Bob with the Mandela Effect phenomenon, truth or fiction, correct?
Very important.
And so we're going to get an update today. I want to direct people to the International Mandela Effect Conference where I just was, where I accepted the Golden Mandy Award, the second annual. There'll be a link down below. You can go check that out over there. We did 2 hours and 45-minute show, but in the beginning, they announced the award and everything. So thank you, everybody who voted for me. Very grateful to be acknowledged, for all the efforts I put in to bring in this phenomenon.
Well deserved, Evan. Well deserved.
Thank you, Bob. So today we're going to be getting an update from Bob. And do you want to go straight into one of the main topics, or would you like to give an overview type?
You are in control, Evan. We'll go whatever way you want to go today.
Okay. Well, one of the main topics we're going to talk about today is the booking process. So, I was hoping you could give an overview of that process, what you expect, some of the obstacles you may encounter, some of the ways of motivating some of these celebrities to get interviewed, the whole process. I was hoping we could cover that today. And then, the other thing is that getting into production seems to have taken a little longer than maybe you anticipated. You had led me to believe, and we're going to get into why that is, after we talk about the booking process. So
sure,
you can go ahead and take.
In every documentary, and every one I've ever made for the NBC network or NBC People, Sci-Fi Channel, NBC Universal, or Fox Network, Fox Broadcasting, it usually starts with a agreement that you're going to get certain people to be in the show, and that's the idea. Who's going to be in the show? So we always anticipated the people that we're looking for are going to be, who are people that are in the actual Mandela Effect evidences, things that we would call residual evidence, So Sally Field being called Sally Fields, as I remember it, and many other people remember it. We want to be able to, talk to Sally Field and talk to her directly. We want to be able to talk to her brother, who's at CERN, who possibly there's some connection between CERN and the Mandela Effect phenomenon that we're seeing. And when I say phenomenon, Evan, remember, we're going to put the word phenomenon into the title because the Mandela Effect phenomenon is a little different than a Mandela Effect kind of general idea. The phenomenon would be Sally Field apparently is now Sally Fields, I remember, is Sally Field, but unless you can show some kind of evidence that she was Sally Fields at one time in another dimension, or maybe a piece of that dimension has sort of overlapped into our dimension. I don't know any other way you could explain that people on talk shows or fellow actors or actors that have been with her in movies and or TV, that they know her as Sally Fields. They remember her as Sally Fields, and they're saying that. So of course we want Sally to be in the show, right? The movie. Now, to do the booking process properly, you get funded first, fully funded, and then you're able to go out and hire a booking producer, someone who's very good at booking people, calling them on the phone, talking to their manager, talking to their agent, talking directly to them, maybe even family members, to get them to agree to be in the movie or documentary. So that's where we are right now. And I got a little bit ahead of myself thinking we could do it in December before the holidays because we don't have our full funding yet. The funding needs to be fully there to attack the production process properly. Now, the reason we need more of that and more than we thought was because the way it used to go, Evan, we would go to the network, Fox, NBC, Universal, Sci-Fi. We talk to the executives. They get really excited, and they essentially finance the production. They'll give you a check to start. That's usually for principal photography, to do basically your shooting in general. Actually, let's go back a step. Commencement of principal photography. The commencement of planning those interviews. They write a check for that. Then they write a check, a next like installment check, once we're done with shooting and we're moving into editing. And they give you another check because now you have to pay other people for those positions that are going to do the editing and the job of production. Then you get into what's called post-production. That's like a third check. And you can have different terms in the agreement. They could call it different things, but still it's a third check. Let's be clear. And then maybe there's a fourth check upon delivery to make sure they get their movie delivered. They hold back the last money until the end because they want to make sure they get their movie, right? They're going to pay you and just walk away and good luck. So there's a control there, a controlling mechanism of financing and production. Things have changed drastically. So the way they have changed is that now distributors like our distributor, Screen Media, 1091 Screen Media, basically, that's what they should be called for now, because 1091 is the documentary arm. Screen Media is a theatrical arm. We're hoping we're going to combine both here and get Screen Media, the overseeing body of 1091, to want to put it into theaters to start, and then maybe move it on to streaming, maybe the same weekend or maybe the same exact moment or before even. But the point is we want to basically get everyone clear that we are now dealing with a different production model. Screen Media will put up some money. They've agreed to put up a percentage of the production budget. We had, instead of the network, we have a wonderful, wonderful guy who is, when I say wonderful, great career in television and film. He ran CBS for 4 years, I believe. He was involved in Sony Pictures. He was the head of, I guess I'll be careful here. I don't want to give away too much because I haven't really cleared it with him to say anything about him yet. But he's a really great guy. He ran CBS 4 years, and he is a real student of television. And he agreed with me back in the pandemic that this should be made. So it was almost like I'm selling to an executive of television, and he's agreeing completely. And he absolutely, Bob, great idea. So he put a little bit of money in to begin the process. And I was able to get an editor, and we do a presentation. Evan, you were involved in the presentation reel at the end. We needed someone to talk about, you remember, we needed someone in the presentation reel to talk about Kevin Costner and Field of Dreams. And Kevin, and then you gave us a beautiful little, mention about why you thought Kevin Costner was so important and how you had always thought he would one day speak about Field of Dreams. And he did, saying it's the thing everybody remembers from Field of Dreams. That line, if you build it, they will come. And it's in our culture. It's so in our culture that whatever. So
I knew one day I would find him saying that line the way we remember it.
So the executive that I'm telling you about, the former executive of a major network, has agreed to invest essentially half the money for the production. So we were very excited because we thought we would be getting some help from the Mandela Effect community and other people want to invest. But remember, the model has changed. He's not running a network. He's an investor. He's investing in this movie because he now knows that we have distribution. It used to be the distributor, Fox Television or NBC Universal. They have a distributor. They distribute it out to the public. They're also the financier, 100% possibly, right? So now that's not the model anymore. The networks don't want to do this type of programming anymore. They've been very clear with me. In fact, Fox Network told me over the last couple of years and even last few months that certain venues, call it cable television, streaming, whatever, it just is, documentaries are not in vogue at the networks anymore. They're not. So my buyer is no longer really buying. They're not buying. So I didn't know who was really getting these things out until this one fellow told me in the last couple of months, let's say 4 months ago, that this new method of distribution and producing is something I should be looking at very carefully. That means you get the distributor, Screen Media, to go, yeah, we want to do these things. We love this idea. Okay, great. Or more than one idea. Maybe you have multiple movies from me, right? But this one, Mandela Effect, the executive is a great guy over there at 1091 Screen Media, and he loved it. And he said, this is great, Bob. I don't understand why this hasn't been done before. Mandela Effect, absolutely. It's huge. When he realized that, he got as much money as he could to put up toward the budget. Then we had the other fellow I told you about, the former head of CBS. He's going to now put the other money in. But we have a little block right now because we need to come up with the other half to match his half, which we're doing fairly well with, but we're not yet quite even close to where we need to be. So the decision was made sometime in mid-December, very clearly to me, that we're not going to go fully into production till we complete the production budget funding. So the production budget funding is taking longer than we wanted because it's taking more time, and also because the individual I'm telling you about really wants us to kind of find the other partner on this, full partner. Maybe not full half, but maybe a bigger chunk than we're getting now. So I'm being honest with everybody. I never want to be accused of exaggerating or kind of keeping things from people, because now we're in like a democracy. Making documentaries is now become like a democratic process. It's unbelievable. I have now researched several movies that have come out. I'm not going to get into their quality. I'm not going to get into their veracity, whether or not they're really great documentaries, whether or not they even should have been made. But they are literally using this model I mentioned. People go out, find out if there are people willing to want to watch this thing, a little like crowdfunding used to be a couple of years ago. Someone wanted to make a movie, a remake of an old famous movie, and nobody really could get the network or screen medias of the world, the people that make theatrical movies, whatever, to want to make these things. So it's become a harder thing now to get funding to make documentaries. It's a whole different model now. So I embraced it a couple of months ago. Evan, I really decided this is now a methodology of developing funding and movies, documentary movies. But the good news is there's a higher level now. You could get them into theaters, which is where I think documentary could really be a new juggernaut of theater going, because I really believe documentaries have done very well in theaters, but not often produced. So we're hoping the Mandela Effect phenomenon, fact or fiction, will be in theaters. People will go to watch it the old-fashioned way, but also be streaming it. And the streaming part is what's replacing a lot of the television stuff I used to do. Streaming, you're usually watching on your TV now. You can get the app, whatever app you have to get for what you watch streaming wise, and you can literally get the app on your television, download that, and then literally be watching television streamed through an app. And apps are going to be the way I think you're going to be watching television in the future. Very few, people are going to be watching TV their dial 24713, whatever. There's going to be like an app called the news app and whatever. And maybe there'll be something called a documentary app. But right now, the documentary app might as well be Amazon, Roku, you name it, wherever you can pay $3.99 or $12.99 to watch something. It's almost like home video used to be, and that's where we are now. So theatrical release, God willing, will be the premiere. And then when you used to watch it maybe on home video and things like that, streaming would sort of be that. But I do think the theatrical release is very, very attractive to me. So I'm asking people to join the movie business. The movie business is very similar to what we're describing now. You go out and get the money from investors, and then you make the movie, and the investors then can partake in the income stream that can be developed from that. So you get paid back your initial investment, and then you get a percentage back of interest, and you also get royalties. In this case, profit participation for years to come. So for TV people, it's new. But for film people, oh no, this is where it normally is. So now, because of theatrical merging with streaming, and later on, you could see it on television too, because TV networks that are still around, even cable, might go, that did really well on streaming. That was really great in the theater. Sure, we'll put it on History Channel. Sure, we'll put it on Discovery Channel and get another level of income. That money is split now with the investors on all these different venues that the movie goes out on. They're participating in all those profit margins, if you will, right? So it's all new to a lot of people. It's even new to me. This is not a method I've used to raise money for funding projects that I've made. Out of let's say 15 projects I've made for network television and direct to video after the show airs, it goes to video after that. I've never had to do this before, but I want people to know you have a say now in what you can watch and what you can talk about at work the next day and stuff. The old days of the water cooler, hey, what'd you watch last night? You can bring that back in a way, and you can go to the office the next day. You see that thing I got streamed last week? Yeah, everyone's talking about it. I'm an investor in that. Really? Wow. Yeah, and talk about the concept and talk about what's going on. So everybody in the Mandela Effect community, especially, if they were to invest, $5,000 or $10,000, that to me would be like the dream, because I would love the other half, not to be a big investor who used to be running networks, but I'd love to see the people who were involved in the Mandela Effect, like you, other people be involved. But it's a tall order. You're asking for a fairly big number of people or a big number to cover. So we're sort of in that middle road now where we thought we'd have either the first investor and also the individual investors come up closer to the budget. Our budget is kind of established. We know what that is. And we have to make that budget, that number, a little closer to reality before we actually hire our staff, put them into an office, and then we want a 12-week production cycle. We're not sitting here going, we don't know when it's going to be on. There are stories you will learn, Evan, and I'll be glad to tell people. We'll probably have some investor discussions in the next few weeks after the new year to keep people abreast of what's going on. But the bottom line is we have investors right now, a few of them, who we could have meetings and discuss this, In the meantime, we're probably looking for, like I said, a 12-week window. Once we get our money fully funded, we're going to hit the ground running and deliver that movie in 12 weeks. Why? Because you have to kind of like consolidate your people and like a little machine get to work, get it done, and move on. There are stories, and I'm not going to get into it today, but in our investor meetings, we'll talk more about this. Because I'm kind of leading the charge of network producers who've done primetime television documentaries trying to move into this world that has been sort of usurped by the guys that got there earlier who just were, finding any way to make a documentary with credit cards or family and friends, whatever. And they got that into the direct marketing method I'm telling you, and they made money. Money was made, a lot. And so we're not looking down at that. We're saying that's great. But imagine if you had great quality, a great production, and also a very great income stream. I think you don't have to give up quality just to be able to make money. And I've never shied away from, I put all my money on the screen. When I tell a network and a budget, I'm going to have these people in the last show you can watch from 6 years ago, Aliens on the Moon. Buzz Aldrin had a guarantee Buzz would be in there. Had to guarantee Edgar Mitchell, the late astronaut from Apollo 14. Is he going to be in there? Yes, he is. I had to guarantee that to some degree. You have to be able to, get people of quality to make your point. You can't just put a camera on yourself and walk around some city and going, I'm amazed. I'm allegedly, this could be true. Oh, wow. People look at that and go, where's your evidence? What are you talking about, right? So you want great people to be in the movie, documentary, and you also want to be able to make money. So back to our show. Our movie called The Mandela Effect Phenomenon, Fact or Fiction. If I want Sally Field, Tom Hanks, Kevin Costner, and how about James Earl Jones? I mean, all the Mandela Effect people know what I'm talking about, which events those were, or which Mandela effects we're talking about. I mean, you can't do this movie without those type of people in it. You have to have them, in my opinion. Now, I'm not guaranteeing anybody, but I would like to start today with you, Evan, and any future appearances I do with you on your channel. We want to motivate Sally Field. We want to motivate Sally Fields. We want to motivate, I'm saying it. We want to motivate Sally Fields. We want to motivate Kevin Costner. We want to motivate Tom Hanks, the director of Forrest Gump. The director is a friend of mine. I don't see any reason why Robert Zemeckis can't be in our movie, explaining when he shot the scene, of Forrest, Gump sitting on the bench saying, my mom always said life is like a box of chocolate. But he also shot a version that is that version, which is amazing, but it didn't make it into the movie. So I'm thinking, Evan, I'll just let my hair down on this issue right now. That gives me the feeling that in some other dimension, Robert Zemeckis thought about shooting it that way, did it, and then put that in the movie. But in our timeline, he chose the one where maybe Forrest said it in a way, maybe he liked the lighting. I don't know. Maybe he liked it a certain way where Forrest, my mama said life was like a box of chocolate. And then, of course, we have David Letterman at the Academy Awards giving, these are the residue evidences. I love to throw it in here in our conversation. The residue evidence of David Letterman complimenting the line, life is like a box of chocolate. You never know what you're going to get. If it was life was like a box of chocolate, you never know what you're going to get. It's not a very good line. It's written out of tense. It's not, I'm a writer, I'm telling you, it's almost like Forrest being, Forrest, the way he was a little bit autistic, but a savant,
Mm-hmm.
He might say it wrong because, but he left it in. I want to ask Robert very clearly, like Robert Zemeckis, let's break this down. If David Letterman is giving a great compliment in 1995 or so, right, and now it seems wrong, talk me through this. See that, and that's why you want an interview with a guy like that, to really get it out there and the people get to understand that. So, Robert, if you're hearing this, please pick up the phone and call me, because we are moving now to the next level booking, right, Evan? We're going to call Robert Zemeckis up. We decided we were calling everyone last week, and there's nobody. I mean, I don't know whether in the Hamptons, Florida. I mean, not Hamptons, it gets cold there now, but Florida, the Caribbean. I mean, anywhere where it's warm, probably, that's where everybody is. I can't get anybody on the phone. I couldn't even begin. I called a couple. We had one of our people, and I did as well, call a few of the management companies that handle some of these actors and actresses and directors, whatever. They're not back till January 6th, January 5th. It's like they make the message, go out. You email somebody out of it's automatic reply. It's like we came up blanks. I mean, blanks. So we decided not to pound anybody, leave messages. We want to build up our funding over the holiday best we can. And we're having many talks with our investor. He's in New York. And we are talking to him about, I'm in California, by the way. I'm from New York. But I think we're really trying to motivate production to start right after the first of the year, even if we don't have all our funds in. And that's the rub right now. I'm trying my best to kind of like transform my production process that I used to do on network television up until recently into this other process, raising money from interested parties, even a major investor like the guy in New York. Those are the people, obviously, that will be the easy replacement for the networks for me. If I can go out in all my future documentary features and get the money from one guy, I would. Let's face it. If there's one investor out there that wants to invest in the Mandela Effect movie right now and said, I'll put up the entire budget, I love this, whatever. Well, we would talk to our investor who's promised to put in half, and we'd say we have this other guy who wants to put it all. Do you still want to, or we'll just go with him? Now, that doesn't stop anyone who invested so far, because I have a large piece of the pie, of course. So I'm giving my pieces to the smaller investors. So look, I'm sharing the ownership in more ways than one. I want everyone to feel part. The Mandela Effect, to me, I was telling you recently, I'm pretty well known for the UFO coverage I've done over the years. When I got involved in the early 90s, I had studied this for a couple of years. I was a writer at college, journalist at college, so I was ready to go back into journalism. And I said, UFOs are a big story, but no one's really showing the evidence. They're talking about alien abductions, they're talking about this, talking about that, but they're not talking about any evidence. Like there should be a lot of videos, there should be photos, there should be whatever. So I spent my time looking for the kind of residual evidence, the real evidence that people were seeing things and cameras were capturing that. And I focused on that. That's my claim to fame. I'm focusing on the evidence of UFOs. You might have all kinds of stories, but I'm into the evidence, right? So there wasn't a lot of people doing that at the time. And I was able to get people to come on television and talk about the evidence of UFOs. Now I want to have people come on and talk about the evidence of the Mandela Effect. That's what impressed, I think, the investor in New York, that we were showing the actual evidence that something is going on. Look, Evan, we could sit here and debate all day long whether or not, and you guys covered it today in the meeting you had and where you got the award. And some people just talk about what they remember and maybe want to see if other people remember. And that's great, but there won't be a consensus. There won't be any kind of we won't move the ball up the field at all. It'll just be one of those fascinating discussions. What do you remember? What do you remember? What do you remember? But if you could show people the evidence that something really was at one time, something apparently, like I was saying about David Letterman and all that other stuff about Forrest Gump or Sally Fields. So we're working on many fronts right now, but raising money, unfortunately, look, no one likes to ask people for money. Nobody likes that. By the way, if you do like that, call me because I got a job for you. And by the way, that's not a joke. In the movie business, movies that you normally went to theaters for, let's say, an executive producer, you see the name in the title, right? It's exactly the opposite of a producer in television. A producer in feature films is usually the money guy. Executive producer would equal dollar signs. He helped raise the money, or she or they, could be a group. You might see 4 executive producer categories, like 12 people, bracket. Somewhere along the line, those people were involved in raising the money, in getting different ways to raise the money. Maybe one guy in that group or one woman in that group is going to contribute creatively, but almost no one, right? I'm not talking about if you see Steven Spielberg or somebody you really know is a creative person. Come on. He maybe was involved and helped raise the money by going to meetings and phone calls and Zooms or whatever now, right? And got people to, movies used to be done this way or still are. A movie I have an idea for the Mandela Effect. Great. And then you go around to all the different territories around Spain, Europe, you name it, Japan, China, whatever. And you get those territories to agree. One group maybe control a territory for Japan. They want this movie just on the idea of it. And they put money in just on the idea. They don't see a movie yet. They just hear what you're hearing. I'm getting it together. I've got the people ready, whatever. And it's a great idea. Usually it's a drama of some kind, or a comedy. It's not a documentary. But again, that's a model that's been working for years and years, decades, where you go out and sell territories around the world on your movie about Godzilla, maybe, some science fiction movie, whatever, right? That's been well known to work in the science fiction and other kind of areas. Well, this is not that, but it's a little more like that. It's a little more like we're trying to get not so much territories, but we're trying to get, we have our marketing now through this one big company called Screen Media and 1091. So now we just want to fill in with what we call covering the production budget with a plethora of possibilities. You could have the investor in New York. You could have 10 different Mandela Effect researchers. You might have a combination of all. We will have absolutely, and we already do, a combination of all three, essentially. People from the Mandela Effect community, an investor from the TV and film industry, and we have screen media putting up, a chunk of the money, right? So that's where we are, right? And then they distribute the movie with an advertising or marketing budget they've already agreed to put up. Now, they get paid back out of the revenues, just like we get paid back as a producer and investor. Producer and investor, we're together. Me and the investors are together, okay? Screen media is distributor. They're going to take a percentage of the movie every month, percentage of the sales as a distribution fee, and then they control with the marketing department how it goes out. Our press release that we thought was coming out like weeks ago, now I'm told is going to come out, we're told, before the new year. My feeling is that means a couple of weeks after. Okay, I just noticed that they're very busy. The parent company bought Redbox, which is a big company. So they're dealing with a lot of stuff. And I'm not going to hold them to a date that the press release is coming out about the movie, about the Mandela Effect documentary. But I think it's all coming together. So, but I want people to have a chance to ask questions, what's going on. So we have had several people show up lately that have added to the investor pool just a little bit. There's one guy I want to mention from Australia, but I haven't asked him. It's okay. But I'm going to, he's watching, and I'm going to make sure that I get the okay to mention him because he's a very interesting fellow. And he said, no, you don't have to call me Bob. I'll watch you on Evan's show. So here we are. I'm here for you today, but I'll make sure it's okay to mention him by name next time. And I love the fact we have an investor from Australia now. And then we're beginning. Now, I want to caution everybody about what I said earlier about crowdfunding. Crowdfunding has been used to make movies. Crowdfunding has been used to make documentaries or whatever. Crowdfunding is something that I really don't understand very well. Because if you can ask people to crowdfund your project, whether it's $50,000, $20,000, or millions of dollars, why can't you involve them as an investor? If they're willing to put up a few $1,000s to be a crowdfunding source, why not make them an investor? The only reason you would do that is you're greedy. There's no other reason. I mean, when you think about the concept of crowdfunding and you think about the concept of investing in a movie, the money's the same, but you're never going to see it again if you crowdfund. But if you invest it into a movie, you're going to get it back, and then you're going to get interest, and then you're going to get a profit participation. Now, is there a risk that you may not see your money again? A documentary that is fairly low budgeted compared to what I've made for network television, and the amount of money being made in this field right now, in this genre, I don't think it's too likely you're going to lose your money. And I could make that point to anybody. But I think every producer of movies should be very honest. There is a possibility the movie will bomb. Nobody.
Or with any investment. With any investment, there's always a possibility of losing money.
Right, exactly. So if it was such an easy guarantee, everybody would do it. So the idea is there's a degree of risk. All right. Now, there are people who go out in the movie business, and I'd be glad to share a documentary I shared with you that was about the movie raising part of the business. It was called Money for Movies, essentially, and the pitfalls. I'm not going to mention it by name, and Evan, I don't blame these guys who say, if you give money to a movie, like let's say toward a movie I'm making, and you're losing that money will hurt your family, do not do it. Do not do it. If that investment you're going to make, you're going to feel that, God forbid you lose it, don't do it. And that's any honorable producer of this way of making entertainment product should be very honest. I mean, you have to be honest with people. Unlikely in this case, but I can think of a
as you're getting used to this new model coming from network television and then now having to go out and raise some of the money for the project. This one major advantage is the creative freedom that you necessarily you probably didn't have in the past. So I was wondering if you could talk to the creative freedom and you know how
I'm so happy you
the
mentioned
benefit
that. Evan,
that brings to you.
Evan, I could hug you for that because hug. There are people in this business who unfortunately have somehow determined that what you just said, the idea that you don't have anyone to answer to. Let's look at the pros and cons for a minute. When I go to do my movies, formerly called network primetime specials, but we make them the same way, don't get me wrong. The only difference is we put a commercial coming up next, coming thing for the commercial breaks. But beyond that, we're making the same exact product. We're not changing it just because it's on television or it's a feature film. It's the same thing. So first you convince the network it's a good idea. And they go, great. Then you convince them that the money they're going to spend is great. And they agree, and it's fine. It's very well within the framework of what should be done. Then they're standing over you, Evan, like you've never seen, okay? I had a woman named Darlene. I'd love to name her I'll say Darlene L. I hope someday she sees this. And she goes, Bob, thank you for that. She was head of broadcast standards and practices at the Fox network. Every time I was doing a show, I'm thinking about Darlene in the back of my mind. Is Darlene going to approve that photo? Is Darlene going to approve that way we phrase that? They're not going to judge everything, but there are certain things they're going to look at that could offend not only their stockholders at News Corp that owns all of the Fox group, or is it going to offend someone, in a way that we're not even sure? Is there something wrong about the image? Is it going to be fraudulent? She's not going to be able to judge that easily, but she's looking for anything that could affect the Fox network, and the same thing for NBC Universal, Sci-Fi. Anything that's going to be negatively impacting on them, they're worried about. So you have someone standing over you, you better be good. The worst case scenario, you send in the master of the movie for approval. You're like, please. And it comes back with all kinds of notes. And you're spending thousands of dollars to re-edit the movie or the documentary to match a certain, quality that they didn't, whatever. They didn't like what they saw. Luckily, that never happened to me. But I will tell you this. They knew me coming into the meetings to start the process. He's an accredited journalist. He's written for newspapers, magazines. He's worked at NBC Unsolved Mysteries, Tribune Entertainment, Tribune News. Geraldo Rivera was someone working with. So the reality is I'm coming in with a credential to be trusted. Bob has already gone through the process of others standing over him, and he's come through that with flying colors. So we are comfortable with him. Those days are over. With these other methods, you can come in with a movie that no one has checked. God knows if anyone verified its authenticity, its veracity. It's a documentary that's supposed to be based on truth. And these things are going out to the public with no checks and balances. So the way you described it, Bob, there's no one really to answer to. From me, there's no problem. I'm already thinking about Darlene in the back of my mind, even though she's no longer there anymore. There's no Fox. But I'm a trained journalist. That's how I'm going to think. I'm not going to give you a product that's going to be ripped apart by other journalists down the road. I can't have that. So I'm working for a collective veracity of the culture. The culture is going to come back and tell me, Bob, you did a good job, but you didn't. Bob, you put bullshit in there. It's not true. And there are plenty of things out there right now, Evan, that are coming out that are slipping right through to the buyer, and the old expression, buyer beware. Okay, caveat emptor. It's funny because a friend of mine, Mark in New York, he's a CBS News producer, and he coined the phrase. One of the stories we worked on years ago, And it was about Ronald Reagan. The key was Ronald Reagan had interacted with us before he died about a UFO event he had when he was governor of California. And Mark saw the facts came in, and Mark goes, Bob, unbelievable. And he walks out. And the next day at the office, Kiviat emptor, Kiviat emptor. It's Kiviat emptor, not caveat emptor, buyer beware in Latin. And it means Bob Kiviat stories require you to be aware that you better be a good consumer. Check Bob out. That's how I interpret it that way. Mark may have his own interpretation. It's like a joke, but my edgy content was being well received by the journalistic community. And Mark, being a former journalist and a present journalist at CBS News, he knew he was formerly at ABC. So ABC News 2020. So I respect news people because they should be about facts. And if they get the facts wrong, that affects them, their future, their career. In this new model we're describing the last 20 minutes, half hour, Evan, there's no checks and balances. No one's checking to see what these things are verifiable or not in these documentaries. So I am bringing my credentials into this mix now. So back to what you said originally, I like not having someone over me because sometimes it can be a little bit annoying. I can tell you one example if you want to hear one before we get in today. That was a nightmare that an executive who I really respected contacted me and said, Bob, I had a problem essentially the last couple of months here at the network. So I'm a little worried than I used to be. I'm a little more worried than I ever was with you. And I'm thinking about changing a few of these segments around. And I'm like, you can't do it. Like, what? We're at the end of the line. Why are we doing that? And he just wanted to change a little bit of the order of the segments a little bit and adjust a little bit. And I did that. But then it affected the computer systems. And the computer systems locked up. We almost didn't make delivery of the shows because a network executive said at the last minute, I'm a little worried. I don't want that anymore. No, I don't want that. I've already proved myself at the stage in the story with this guy. Many, many shows, many hits, never a problem, all kinds of controversy. We were fine. Everything was great. The controversy was these were controversial subjects like the Mandela Effect. But, I came through with flying colors. So what are you doing? Why would you do that to me? And it really screwed my systems up. It's a great story. Someday maybe it'll be in a future documentary about TV and film. But it was not his fault necessarily, but he asked for something that was really out of line. You don't ask for something at the very end that could screw up the technology of your entire production process. So we got through that, but it was a great lesson. So I love what you said that kicked this whole thing off, talking about this part of our talk today. But I do like the idea that there's no arbitrary network executive standing over me who might, like I said, arbitrarily make a change in the show because he has the right to do that. When you're delivering to a network, believe me, even if it's not in the contract, they have the right, implicit right, to make you bend and do certain things.
Right.
Mandela,
So
we want to
the Mandela effect, I think, is very important that you're not having to confront
Agreed.
that with this project.
It's a great point. Can you imagine the executive in this scenario? Bob, I love this. This is great. And all of a sudden we deliver the show and he's like, but that's not my memory. Wait a second. I don't know. And he starts tinkering with the show.
Right. Or he says you need to talk more about time travel, Bob. This is, time travel is probably what I think's behind this. You need to push time travel more on everybody.
You reminded me today when I was watching. I didn't see the whole thing. I admit that, but I came in the middle of your previous appearance today. It was earlier, and getting your award and all that. And I don't know. I feel there was something that was said during the discussion of great Mandela Effect people that I had to share with you, and that is that we all have our feeling about the Mandela Effect. It's affected us in different ways. I'm affected, clearly, very affected. I'm still trying to find this friend of mine from New York who we sat in front of the J.C. Penney sign at Roosevelt Field in New York, going in our high school days, going to the mall every few days. And there was J.C. Penney right in front. There's no way that was spelled with an EY at the end. I know that. Trying to track him down, right? Well, I mean, that's the kind of thing I really want to get in front of him. But again, if I didn't see J.C. Penney in some old newspaper.com and other places spelled the way I remember it, I wouldn't call him on the phone with such a, oh my God, come on, I can prove it. Same way I would tell a network executive, you're making a mistake. I shouldn't take that out. No, we don't want to have that battle. So we're not going to have that battle anymore. We're not going to have that issue. But is it possible someone at Screen Media might say something or whatever, and I'll be affected? Yeah, because I do believe in objectivity in journalism and a little bit open-mindedness. So I'm not going to sit here and dictate to everybody and everything what the Mandela Effect is and how it should be covered. And that's why I love all you guys being involved, and girls and gals. But I think overall, we have a great chance. You're right, Evan, because there's no one going to sit there and dicker with our very, very researched.
Right.
issue.
I think the worst thing possible is someone at Screen Media coming out and saying, we like this theory, so we want you to push this theory.
Right.
That would be awful, because I'm open to all theories, because I can't explain how and why this is happening. So I can't just ignore all the other theories.
It's exactly what happened with that Fox special I told you about a few minutes ago, when the executive nervously, and I understand where he's coming from, nervously felt that somebody was overseeing him, his boss, because he was in a very tight situation in his career. And there were a few things that had gone wrong fairly recently. So he was really careful, overly concerned. Someone's overly protective. Oh my God, I got to really be careful. But this was not needed. It was completely vacuous. It didn't do anything to change the show except convoluted my editing. And it was just a nervous, I hope if he ever watches this, I'll tell him flat out that he was nervous. And in that nervousness, he dictated. And that's not going to happen this time. No way.
Okay, so there was something that you had asked me to send you everything I had on Sally Fields, because you're looking at trying to go through the booking process with Sally Fields and her people. And I told you that I was on newspapers.com, and I put in the famous quote from her acceptance speech in 1984, I believe it is. Yeah. And she says, "You like me right now, you like me." Right. So I punched that in newspapers.com, and I got 18 results from 1985 to 1990, 5 years of newspapers. And then I punch in, "You like me, you really like me," and I got 400 results. Now, how does that makes no sense whatsoever. And to say, well, it's just misremembering and all this stuff we always hear about it. I mean, what's your take on 18 versus 400? Like you've said numerous times, no one ever says the correct line. No one. They always miss. Right. So it doesn't. How do 400 quotes end up in newspapers over those 5 years?
I will open up with Sally Fields when I finally do talk to her, which I'm pretty sure I'll talk to her no matter what. Whether she agrees to be in the documentary feature or not remains to be seen. But I will definitely talk to her one way or another, unless she totally disses me. I don't think she will. The Flying Nun won't do that to me. I watched him, Flying Nun, little boy, little Bobby, All right, so your evidence that you uncovered in that same kind of deep dive you were doing for me, the one thing I remember more than anything is that newspaper little clip you found where a person was reviewing like right after seeing this thing. You like me, you really like me. How can that be? So it was current. It happened fairly recently to when it occurred. That is a incredibly important piece of residue evidence or residual evidence that I would want to build on to talk to Sally. And then add in everything you just mentioned. You can do a search for the phrase.
Correct quote.
Sally, 400 on this side, 0 on the other side. How do you feel about that, Sally? And then you ask her about, when Johnny Carson or I believe another actor Arnold Schwarzenegger, Bert, was it Bert? I'm not really sure. I'm going to go back. My memory's a little bit fuzzy. You hit me with so much material. I was like,
David Letterman.
David Letterman. Right. Excuse me. Again, see,
At
David
the end
Letterman.
of your interview, he says they like you. They really like that. He says that the people like you. And she's like, yeah, they like me. They really like me. She quoted incorrectly that line in the David Letterman interview.
David Letterman. So David Letterman at the Academy Awards, the Forrest Gump, and Interview with a Vampire. Now he's on this. So again, it's David Letterman. Again, it's not a Mandela Effect itself, but now it's curious. Why is it him again? And he's saying, the line. So, and then she makes some other references in the past, right? So I know one thing. It's going to become an interesting interview for me when she literally has to answer. How do you feel about 400 on this memory, but 0 in the other?
18.
How do you explain that? Right.
18 correct quotes in 5 years in newspapers versus 400.
I don't know how she'll explain that. I would love to see her reaction on camera, as we all are going to see her reaction. And I'll do everything I can to interview her and her brother.
How would anyone explain it? I would expect her to just maybe go silent. I mean, what are you going to say? She's not going to jump to parallel universes and all this.
No, how about James, the next person, the booking process? We want to go right down the list. Maybe Tom Hanks, Robert Zemeckis, Kevin Costner for all the reasons of Field of Dreams. Then we get to Darth Vader, and James Earl Jones is covered now in Field of Dreams, and he's going to be talking about Darth Vader. Imagine asking James Earl Jones, Mr. Jones, James, how is it possible that you remember only saying, Luca, I'm your father? You memorialize a script in a documentary about the Star Wars Empire Strikes Back. So the bottom line is, you believe that the line was, when you said it, Luca, I'm your father, right? Now, if he says no, I'll say, wait a minute. Hold on, James. Let's get the video of you walking around the set of 2.5 Men. And you say it right there. What do you want? CNN, this is CNN, or Luca, I'm your father? Why would you allow a writer to write that in when you know flat out? So this is the way the documentary feature is going to be made, and everyone should understand that. I mean, if we end up with 5 people of amazing quality that are booked, like the 5 I just kind of went through real quickly there, including Sally Fields, maybe that's all you're going to see. You might just see me interviewing 5 major people and experts and nice, incredible graphics and everything we show for the analyzing this reality, whatever happened here with the Mandela Effect.
Right. No, we haven't gone much into that. We've talked about celebrities, but I'd like you to give us your idea of other interviews that you plan on doing, like the experts. You haven't talked a lot about the experts.
Let's get right into it, right? So we finally reached out and we finally have a guy, and he's not considered to be a scientist. His name is Jacob Israel. Did one of the earlier rounds, like you, Evan, in the Mandela Effect research. And he brought in some really interesting effects that he's documented, residual effects. We did conclude he's going to be in the movie, and it's great. And he's going to be a great addition. Just to complete the Mandela Effect research community a little bit, so people know, a great guy, Jacobian. I call him Jake now. I get to know him, met him. I want him in this movie badly for evidence, research, period. Also, another great guy that you know and I know, Daniel Scarab, fabulous work. I love the residual stuff he's done. I love a lot of things he talks like you do, the more wider meaning of all this. Love that. Bible effects, of course, and all that. And there are many others. So let's say there will be 3 or 4 or 5 others besides the ones I'm mentioning. That could be 6 or 7 people besides you, Evan. Then we're talking about the actors and artists and creative people and whatever. And there are another 5 or 7 or 8 people I mentioned, right? So now we're like 15 people. You can't have more than like maybe 20 people talking.
Right, but I'm specifically talking maybe about the geography.
I know
geography and anatomy.
Right. So if you want to bring in the anatomy people, the doctor residual effect people who claim they go in and see organs in different places or whatever, I'm pretty sure we'll be able to find the guy that I have a couple of years ago been talking to. I have to re-find him. He was very, very involved in the medical Mandela effects where our body is changed. Our organs are different spots, different sizes. rib cage. I mean, it's unbelievable, actually. Our eye sockets. I mean, crazy stuff. Totally want to get into that. So now we have maybe 7 or 8 Mandela Effect experts, right? And then we talk about the geography. Geography, huge. Bible effects, as I said before, it changes huge. And then we get into a plethora of others. I thought you were going to probably ask about the scientific community, the people that are trying to answer it is it part of the simulation? Is it part of the Elon Musk reality? Is it part of what Michio Kaku talks about, the string theory? And we have these ribbons of reality that are kind of like, I'm simplifying this, believe me. And the ribbons are sort of like blending together, maybe. I don't really know. So I know Michio. I've had him in one of my shows. He could be in the show. There are several experts of the scientific community that are looking at the Mandela Effect that we will ask, maybe bring in, I'm not sure. So I want to leave the bracket of those scientific experts a little bit open right now. We have to do what's called pre-interviews. Our producers and me, we will be pre-interviewing scientists and psychologists and whoever from the academic community, scientific academia. We have to pre-interview them to see what they're saying. If they're saying a bunch of nonsense, we're not going to bring them on the show.
Confabulation.
Yeah,
cognitive illusions.
So people can get an idea today from this thing we're doing today here. They can get how complicated this could be. Get the money in, bring the staff in. You're in a 12-week period. You're trying to get it all done within like 12 weeks to consolidate your staff, and you only have a budget to hire them for a period of time. That's the real producer working. There are some other people who have used this technique of raising money and stuff and stretch it over 8 years, 10 years. It's like, what are you talking about? How could you possibly raise money and then wait a decade to deliver that? Something's fishy about that. Something doesn't feel right about that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not part of that. I never want to be near that. But let's face it, I've been trying for a couple of months to get this up and running. And I feel like I'm delayed. So I'm glad you said Bob is like admitting that he can't get it done quite as quickly as he hoped. I'm admitting, but I'm shooting for a couple of month period, not 8 years and 10 years, which doesn't smell right to me. So we're talking about this year, 2023. The Mandela Effect movie comes out in 2023. We're not talking about.
I have no doubt once you get into production, this thing's just going to take off.
And we're going to share that production process with people too. They're going to learn a little bit about that. We're going to have a little kind of a Zoom camera showing us in production and what we're doing. We want people to feel like they're part of this thing.
Yeah, that'll be
great. Production
great.
Office. Yeah. See,
that'll be great. I look forward to having
you
more
especially
updates as we go along on this channel while we're in production. That's what I'm really, can't wait to get into, but we got to get there.
And this movie, by the way, I made this clear with the investor in New York. He believes, like I thought. I was a little confused a couple of weeks ago. I'll admit that. I had a conversation. I was a little confused. But I definitely have learned that he believes, as I do, that this is like the biggest mystery people are talking about right now. It's like the biggest one. There's nothing even close to it. Even UFOs, nothing's close to it. And it's just not been shown to people that's that big. Once you show people how big it is, like the fellow in Australia, I mean, he's a great guy to talk to you about Australia. Like, what happened? You used to be down under on the globe. Like, look at it, back to my little prop, this is the globe, right? Australia used to be like down here somewhere. Now it's like over here somewhere, closer to the equator. Like, hello? How is that down under?
And New Zealand is the new down under. It's below Australia now.
So wait a minute. When you're in Australia now, you're not saying we're the country down under anymore?
Well, I don't know. If you look at it, I'm talking about looking on the map. New Zealand is lower than Australia is.
In my memory, New Zealand was actually above, not lower.
Same here, northeast.
And I remember that from the
of
wars.
Australia.
See, again, Evan, we could sit here and talk all day long about the effects, but if I show you evidence that Australia on a globe is positioned where I remember it on a globe in a movie, did that globe get made? Someone made a mistake on the globe? And I think people remember the movie Fast Times at Ridgemont High. No, excuse me, mistake.
That's a good movie, though. And there's a Mandela Effect in the end of it.
Which one is that one again? In Dazed and Confused.
Dazed and Confused.
Dazed and Confused is where the globe is clearly showing Australia, where I remember it, and another continent or something to the left, which some might debate is like the insignia of the map company or the globe company that would position their logo right next to a country on a globe. I'm like, maybe, but we have to analyze that. We're going to actually get a very high-tech analysis of that film and see that globe and track down the globe. I mean, we're going to try to track the globe down. One of my research will be killing me. She'll be like, "Oh, hey, Bob, I can't believe it. We can't find the globe." But we spoke to the prop company. We spoke to the movie. We're going to try to get the Dazed and Confused people to interact with us and tell us where that globe might be. There's another globe, by the way, in Friends, in the show Friends. And again, Evan, I want to see that globe to see the top of the globe. There's supposed to be North Pole there, like an ice cap there. What happened to the ice cap on the North Pole? There is no, it's not cold up there enough. It's not cold enough to freeze the water up there.
Yeah, it's always been called the Arctic Ocean now.
I'm lost on that one. That's going to be a tough one for me because I remember Santa Claus going to a place on the North Pole.
He's on a barge. He's on a barge now.
He's on a barge now?
Yeah, you didn't get the update?
God, I love this timeline I'm on right now. And then, of course, there are people who say the Earth has changed completely. And Evan, I'm one of those people, just so people, I'll let my hair down on that one too today. I'm one of those people who feel like things have changed. I tell my sons, I have two boys in college now. The younger one's in college now too now. One graduating, one a freshman. I tell them I feel the world's changed. Something's different. And I believe, and I'm going to make this point in the movie, that there are things in our culture over the last 4 or 5, 6, 7 years I don't believe would have happened on the world that I'm from. I don't believe it could have happened on the world that I came from.
It definitely feels like I'm in a, well, I felt that way since 2016 when I woke up to the Mandela Effect. I'm in a different place. There's thousands of changes. This isn't just misremembering a cereal box. I mean, people have no idea. I could go on and on.
I came across something else recently. It's not a Mandela Effect, but it reminds me a little bit of the island in New York. Okay, I mean the idea that there's another insert of history that is not from my timeline. I don't remember it all, and apparently there are these movies. And again, this is totally off the beaten track. But I'm a big history buff on the Nazi war, the Nazi period, and what went on. Not just because I'm Jewish, but I also feel it's my Jewish thing. But I do feel that there are these films that have been found or made into a movie. I found where you see the actual movies of what the Nazis made for the German people to hate the Jews. And these were very well done movies. I mean, they are very, very craftily produced, where you could almost see now in this timeline we're on now, how Nazi Germany came together, how they were able to convince millions of people that they were on the right track when they were the worst possible, regime ever to be on the planet, and the amount of people they killed and how they killed people and everything. But how the German people got convinced these people could be in power. I mean, Germany is a fairly sophisticated country. To allow a group like that to come to power, you had to believe there was some evidence they presented that people believed it, right? And I was in a class years ago, in Nazi Germany class. It was called Nazi Germany in college, believe it or not. They never mentioned these films. There was a guy, Dr. Buchholz, I'll never forget. I'll call this guy up in the middle, just because for my own needs, because I'm from a timeline I don't relate to. How could he have missed those movies? How could he not want to show those? I mean, those would have been the most important way to understand how a major industrial country with a history like Germany had, that could allow that to occur. These crazy people took over the country. These insane people, right? Crazy, right? So I'm one of those people where there are Mandela effects that aren't really under the Mandela effect banner right now. That for me, they're like, I don't understand that at all.
Yeah, they're sort of like I was on with the people from IMEC. Chris talks about timeline insertions, and that's sort of what I hear. Like that's definitely a part of the Mandela effect, not necessarily something I focused on. I focused on things that were one way and then another way. But the timeline insertions definitely seems real.
You
I
can
mean,
almost see our movie documentary, the categories, and we might have a category that would slip in our coverage called the inserted history
yeah,
section. I mean, you can think of a couple, and I'm kind of hinting at them now. But we want the other countries like Australia and Germany and other countries to share what they know about their own Mandela effects. It's hard to share Mandela effects in another language because we don't know enough about, just like they look at our, can you imagine someone from another country or our friend from Australia now, who I'll find out if I can mention him next time. And we ask him questions about our country he may not really know, or you ask someone who speaks a different language about life is like a box of chocolate. Is and was is so, in our language, it's a big deal, but will they be able to understand the nuance of that?
I
And
think
and how is it in another country? We have to look at that. When you watch a subtitle version of Forrest Gump, they're repeating it in the subtitles, right? Exactly what we have, but it gets complicated. So we're going to find a way that we can involve the foreign countries in the Mandela effects, because there are absolutely Mandela affected people in other countries.
definitely in their culture, in their language. In
Right.
China, in the Chinese language, there's characters that were a different way, and now they're experiencing the same exact thing. So we need a bilingual person who can explain real quickly in the documentary. Yes, in our culture, we're seeing this. In Russia, we need a bilingual person who can say who sees all the stuff and is talking about it with all the Russians, but that they can come out and they can say in English that this is happening in our in whatever, all the different, this is happening worldwide, right? We've already discussed this.
Right.
So I think we just would have to find those bilingual people that can
It'll
talk.
be a small, to the investors involved watching, and also you, of course. And we want to make this commercial. We want it to be understandable. And if we start adding too many other countries involved in the Mandela effects, it'll start to get hard for the American people to understand it. But I do believe, my heart of hearts, we will be beginning the Mandela effect discussion with this movie. This movie is not going to, once and for all, we're done, see ya. No, this begins the discussion and puts the Mandela effect phenomenon on the cultural lexicon, on the cultural landscape, in the cultural lexicon, on the cultural landscape in a way it's never been before. And I want to mention today, before we end, Jimmy Kimmel freaked out on camera that it's not in this timeline Smokey the Bear, a on-air KTTV, Channel 11, Fox, ironically. Excuse me. I made a mistake. No. This was KABC here in LA, the ABC affiliate, the night we changed our clocks, spring ahead, fall back. So we sent them back an hour. Now, not you, but everywhere else in the country except Arizona, as you taught me. Didn't know that until today or a few days ago. Did not really understand that concept, that you don't set your clocks back. Daylight savings time. Never, ever was it daylight saving time. I don't care. That's one of my J.C. Penney's. No one is ever going to convince me that I'm crazy, that I don't come from a different dimension, at least when it comes to that saying. So KABC, Channel 11, Channel 7, here in LA. I was watching just because I'm watching the news that night. I don't know. I just don't watch the news every night, but I watch the local news. At the end of it, the guy goes, I'm going to find this. I think his name is Rory. I believe the first name is Rory, the guy. He does most of the weekend Channel 7 news, ABC here, local. He says, okay, basically, and don't forget, you got to set your clocks back 1 hour. It's daylight savings time. Daylight savings time, he says. Daylight saving time. That's just wrong, he says. That's just wrong. You got to see it. It's one of those classic moments where the human facial expression says everything. I was trying to tell you this the other day. It looked like to me, and I might be wrong when I interview Rory, and I'm pretty sure, I think his name was Rory. Don't quote me on that. but I'm going to say to him in the interview, if they let me interview him, it looks like you were correcting it. Like you had an argument with the teleprompter person, because they usually do a run through right before they do the half hour. It's live, but before that, they do kind of a run through quickly. And he had an argument with somebody. It looks like to me, he said, nah, change the teleprompter. It's daylight savings time. And they go, no, it's not. It's like Jimmy Kimmel. It's like the Jimmy Kimmel thing, but you're not seeing in the argument, right? And Jimmy Kimmel's to me was really great because on Halloween, look at the day, Halloween night, daylight savings time, change night. If the Mandela effect has some kind of a meaning that someone or something is doing this for a purpose, I'm always amazed by these things, Halloween night, daylight savings time night, the Academy Awards with David Letterman. Then David Letterman's also the one interviewing her, Sally Field, later on. These kind of like people seem to be surrounding the Mandela.
I got to interject here. David Letterman is also the one who received a Publishers Clearinghouse big check from Johnny Carson. Hey, David, you're the big winner. And sorry, Ed McMahon is not here to present this to you. Ed never gave out big checks.
I'm still looking on that one. I'm still looking for the residual Jacobian. Listen, Scarab, anybody, the residual evidence people. Evan, you are a great one too. Obviously, you're like the grand master of all. But as you won the award, if you could dig deeply into that one, I wish I had a piece of residual evidence for the documentary feature that literally shows us that there's proof of that. There's
a whole bunch. I made a compilation, the biggest compilation on the internet of Ed McMahon, Published Clearinghouse, bringing big checks to the front door.
Let's go back to the one that you pointed out. Ed McMahon is lampooning himself, right? At some point, there's Ed McMahon.
He did a rap video saying, I gave big checks to the ladies in the 80s. And then he's at people's front door saying, hey, remember that big check? I need the big check back. I'm having financial problems.
I remember that. That's huge.
He rapped about the whole thing we remember experienced in our lifetime, but it never happened.
Right. So our researchers are going to now find like family members or someone who could speak for Ed McMahon. Would he be someone to miss that? Would he be someone to allow them to write that into some skit he was doing?
That's what people are claiming.
Right.
But then he's being interviewed by Tom Green. I don't know if you remember Tom Green.
Yeah, he's a comedian.
Okay, he had a show. He had Ed on it. And he says, so did you actually go up to people's doors, Ed? And he's like, yeah.
I love it. I know the Tom Green one. So those are great.
People just think Ed's lying. They think he's lying to,
Does anybody know, if anyone contacts Evan after watching this, please let me know. Where is Tom Green? I have not heard that guy mentioned anywhere. He was very popular on MTV for a while. He was a very popular guy back in the late 90s. Whatever happened to this guy?
I haven't seen it.
Because I want to talk to him. I want to ask him, because remember, I want to ask him when you talk to Ed, and he said that, did you get the feeling he was telling God's honest truth? Why would he make it up?
There's another interview where Ed's being interviewed and he said, the guy brings up Publishers Clearinghouse. And Ed just says, yeah, that's what everyone talks about. He doesn't correct him and say, I was never affiliated with them. He doesn't correct them. So there's a lot of odd stuff with that.
That's a great one. See how our investigating producer, what that does, we try to circle the issue. We don't have a direct boom example, but we have enough surrounding it.
There's a lot.
To make it appear that Ed wouldn't make it up. We present a prima facie case like a journalist or a lawyer does, and then we move on after Ed McMahon. But the viewer goes, the audience at home or in the theater goes, yeah. It must.
Oh, there's so much.
He must have back.
I can't wait till you look through all the Ed McMahon stuff because you're going to want to put a tiny bit of that part of this in the documentary. There's so many sitcoms where Ed walks up to the front door with a big check. Something he never did in real life, apparently.
Yeah.
Now, people say, oh, he worked for American Family Publishers. Yes, I heard about them for the first time in 2016. I had never heard of American Family Publishers. Okay, he worked for another publisher that did the same thing as PCH, as Publishers Clearinghouse. So that's what they're saying. You're thinking you're getting it mixed up with AFP, PCH. And okay, that's one issue. But a lot of people have memories of Ed going up to a front door with balloons
I
and
do.
a big check and
Feeling
like
very
on
awkward. He's like awkward sitting there. You know, he doesn't belong there. You know, it's like you're usually on the Tonight Show, man. What are you doing on this person's porch? I remember myself.
Right,
I
but
mean,
that never happened. He never gave out
bullshit.
big checks to anyone's front door. That's the big Mandela effect for me. That's because I
remember it.
remember seeing it on TV, like around Super Bowl time.
So are we crazy?
They would
What
give
is it?
away the big prize and Ed would go to someone's porch.
Right. So in other words,
Oh my
these
God.
effects that we'll be looking at, if they have this kind of, if not complete residual evidence, like the line, "You like me, you really, really like me," that a journalist wrote, or Madonna's name is not Madonna, and the journalist writes it literally the real name right there, which is a real effect. It might be, residual evidence effect. Maybe the Ed McMahon one is a good one for people to really hear about today, because we may not be able to nail it, boom, but we can almost surround it so that it appears any jury or any judge would say, sure looks like he was at one time in a scene on someone's porch giving a check. There's enough evidence to show that, and enough people believe that. So there are those effects that we'll cover.
There's so much. There's not only Ed McMahon, there's other people like that go up to people's door and they do reenact what Ed did. They have a big check. It says Ed McMahon on the bottom, Publishers Clearinghouse. They go up to a door and say, "You're the big winner." I mean, it's just all over the place.
Yeah,
It makes no sense. Makes no sense.
So are there any other last questions? Because I'm telling you before we wrap today that the one thing I'm really happy you brought up today was two things. That the booking process requires us to be really careful and not reach out before they're ready, because they're not even there for the holidays. So after the new year, we'll be jumping heavily into this booking process. And the finances for the project, the Mandela Effect movie documentary, this is being slightly held up because our main investor in New York wants us to complete the funding process before we start. And I will add one thing, that if there's anybody out there who has had the Mandela Effect reality come into their life, literally been affected by the Mandela Effect, and they're in the industry, film, television, they always thought about maybe getting involved. The investor in New York, I believe, will speak to anyone about joining in and finishing the financing of the movie. So I really believe it's time to get cracking, so to speak. Right after the first of the year, we're going to be like, and I'll be speaking to, by the way, I want people to understand this, Evan, anyone who's invested so far, we're going to back our plans up with going out to grant companies, people that do grants for public broadcasting. We're going to be making sure the Mandela Effect is fully funded and ready to go as early in 2023 as humanly possible. And we're moving forward for a 12-week production cycle, we think, in the spring, as we always plan. So nothing's really changed, but we do want to emphasize we're having a little bit of a glitch with the holidays coming into this, and also our investment process must, at this stage anyway, involve us completing our budget funding before we start. So it's a little bit of a block.
So anyone who's thought about getting involved, anyone who wants more information, thinks maybe I kind of want to get involved, whatever, Bob's information will be down below. You can send an email to Bob and he can explain more, what we're doing here.
But again, I want to say this is not crowdfunding. You are literally becoming an investor in a feature documentary that you will be part of for years to come. And though there's always a small chance that somehow things will, some war will happen, and maybe for force majeure, we call it, or something crazy will hold up the production or whatever. But we're very confident there's going to be a movie, and we think it's going to break into the profit margin, everything we're offering, and we believe very strongly. And we could document this. And by the way, if anybody wants to have a meeting on Zoom or whatever with me, where I can show the business opportunity properly, explain some of those pie charts and former movies that have gone out with not the journalistic credentials, but they got it out there somehow and they made money with it, even though it was not necessarily your greatest well-vetted documentary ever, but it still made money. So if those made money, please.
Well, I'm glad you made that point, Bob, because I've been an investor for a long time. I've been in the stock market for 20 years. I've been in crypto. Any investment has risk. I can't stand the people. I just take it as common knowledge. But some people, they don't know that. They think Bob is here saying that, oh, Bob's not here saying there's no risk. There's risk in any investment. But this is exciting, and that's why I'm involved.
The network always felt risk. Why do you think that executive tried to make a tweak to my show? One of my shows, just one of my many shows, a dozen shows with this guy. One time he meddled, and he was meddling because he was worried about it. He was worried about it failing. He was worried about it not making money in advertising. He was worried about it, his career being affected. The division of the network he worked for affected. Risk? Talk about risk. Why do you think they were so worried about Darlene being the broadcast standards person? They're worried about fallout, risk. There's all kinds of risk, whether you lose 10 grand or whether you lose your job or the network gets a black eye or shareholders start selling the stock because of a bad documentary made and it goes on network television.
Right.
So,
well, there's risks in life. There's risks in anything, but we wouldn't be responsible talking about this movie and investing in it if we didn't talk about risks. So we have to have the conversation.
There's risk in anything worthwhile. There's going to be risk. There almost has to be when you think about it, just by the nature of what we're talking about. If everyone could do something with no risk, there would be no reward. They would almost
risk and reward. That's what it's all about.
But again, if anybody wants to verify not only my credentials, Screen Media, 1091 Media, they're owned by Chicken Soup for the Soul, a huge company, just bought Redbox. Nobody is going to fail without giving it an incredible Herculean effort. And you have major companies involved. And I want people to know the one main investor behind us is a former head of a major network. So that should tell people how much the Mandela Effect is important to him and as just a story and a concept, and also how well he thinks it's going to do. But we have our little marching order we have to go through with the financing, which we're going to keep going. So there you go.
Okay, Bob, thanks for joining me today, and can't wait till we do this again.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much, Evan, and congratulations again on the
Thank
award.
you. Happy holidays. Happy New Year, everybody.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Bye,
Talk
Evan.
to you later. Bye.
See ya.